A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Well, it's been more than 3.5 years since the Russian invasion in Ukraine, and any hopes of resolution can sometimes appear to be something like a mirage, disappearing the closer you feel like you're getting. Well, Australian pastor Rob Porter has visited Ukraine 4 times since the world began. He's raised over $100,000 in support for displaced people in Ukraine. He works with local churches there. And he's preparing another visit closer to Christmas. Rob, a special welcome back to 2020.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Hey, Rob, you first went just a month into the war when it first began.
That's right.
And so really over this 3.5 years, and you've visited 4 times, you've got a little bit of what it was like then to what it's like now. How are pastors holding up under the pressures? Is there a lot of fatigue setting in? How do you describe things?
Yeah, great. That is a great question. Look, I would say their mental health is very strained, and they are bearing a lot of extra weight in their pastoring duties, because not only are they supporting their own churches, they're having to support the refugees, the displaced people that are coming over from the war zone within their churches. So they've got double the workload, plus looking after each other and their families, because it's they're concerned about their families, their families themselves, you know, that they'll be caught up in the war as well and be drafted and so on. So there's so many levels of stress for pastors in the Ukraine.
And the whole nation has been affected by war, clearly, because not only tens of thousands, but potentially hundreds of thousands of those who've died on the front lines.
Yes.
The displaced people in Ukraine has been huge. And this is where the churches really come into play, because churches often have facilities, and there's been a steady flow, in fact, an increasing flow of people who've been displaced looking for some sort of help somewhere.
Exactly, yeah, because the government is not able to help people. There's no monetary help for people that are displaced from the war. A lot of people have been bombed out of their homes. Infrastructure, utilities, water, gas, electricity have all been destroyed. So people are just fleeing from that area. They head over to the west, which then puts the burden on the different churches or the different cities as well that they turn up in. They're very blessed if they are able to get housed by a church, because actually what the towns are doing, the municipalities, they will put them in a gymnasium or in a school hall, but the facilities there are not amazing. So anyone that gets put into a church is actually a very blessed person, because at least they're getting love and attention and care and food and so on. They're not left to their own devices. They're actually kind of brought into the church family a little bit, and a community is formed there.
And you've got your own personal experience of this, but people who've gone through being displaced or they've lost a family member, they're literally traumatised.
Absolutely.
And I've heard others reflect that a whole nation is traumatised here, and that's got its own ministry challenges, hasn't it? As a pastor, you go and serve to a traumatised people.
That's exactly right, and that's one of the things that the pastors are finding a barrier. Way of breaking down the barrier is they do head over to the war zone themselves. Personally, as a pastor, they will go on a transport over there, and they will minister on the front line to soldiers to show that they are actually willing to put themselves in danger and to bring the gospel.
I mentioned that you've raised over $100,000 in support. You've been able to take that over with you personally, delivering that into places that are working with displaced people. But I'm imagining right now that $100,000 is just a drop in the bucket of the real need that's there.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And we continue to raise funds for them. I do think, like most wars and things that go on, and with all the current situation in Israel and so on, Ukraine goes in and out of focus. But we do continue to raise funds for them, and our focus is to supply in a very practical way, money for food and for shelter, because although people are being looked after and housed in the church building, they're actually now putting cabins around the particular church that we help, so that some people have privacy and so on. But the funds, it is a drop in the ocean, and we are looking obviously to ways we can raise more and more funds to help them, because they are seeing people lives impacted for the gospel in wonderful ways.
And all of the traumatizing warfare activity is primarily in the east of Ukraine. And so when people are being disaffected, when they're being displaced, they're fleeing to the west. So I assume that the churches that are in the west of the country are the ones who are bearing a burden, because those people from the east are fleeing and they're looking for some sort of solace in the west.
That's exactly right. And some of the churches that Pastor David, who we work with, he is now a regional pastor. He's over 70 churches. So he is actually encouraging those churches to open up their doors as well to refugees. A lot of churches weren't able to, but now they're finding that with the war going on, that they're seeing that the ministry that Pastor David has in his own church, they're wanting to replicate themselves. So they are seeing, incredible. It's an incredible ministry, and people are finding that they love being part of the church atmosphere within the community that they're trying to build there. And of course, it has its problems. People are people, and even though it's a war, people are human beings, and it's not all Christians. It's not all roses. It's a very difficult situation that they're trying to manage, but they are doing a fabulous job in feeding and accommodating and helping people to put their lives back together, because it's not just I always think of war as it's in Africa, or it's in a poor region. This is a first world country, and so the people that are being displaced, they're CEOs of multi-million-dollar companies. They're shop assistants. They're people whose husbands are on the front line, and so it's affecting every level of the society. And so it's an amazing thing that they've done, in that they're able to. It's a leveler. War is a leveler for sure, and so they're able to minister to people from all walks of life.
And the Pastor David, that is your connection there in Ukraine. Forgive my pronunciation. The Uzhhorod? Uzhhorod. There you go. So you have to practice that a few times.
Yeah.
The Uzhhorod Baptist Church.
Yes.
Now, is that Baptist in the way we in Australia often think of as Baptist? As I understand it, there's a lot of churches, they sort of align with Baptist because it is a well-known evangelical brand of Christianity. Is this a Baptist church like we know in Australia?
Yes, it is. It's very, very similar. It's probably slightly more traditional than the Baptist churches here. So women do wear head coverings at times when they're on the platform and they're singing in the choir and so on. But totally full of life and wonderful people who love the Lord and are just willing to lay down their lives in this situation. But they're proud Baptists and. But what I would, they're just amazing people. I've been interviewed a few times for radio, and every time I talk about it, I realize yet again, just seeing the gospel in action in this way is just amazing. Seeing it lived out, you give a cup of cold water to one of these, and they're living that life, and they're seeing people won for Christ in so many different ways, and kids won for Christ and so on. So they're living the gospel, and they've turned the whole church and their whole life over serving the displaced people.
And so what does church look like on a Sunday? Because, you've got up to 80 refugees who are camped out in the church or around the church during the week. Come Sunday, and there are people who are receiving help from the church. They're finding themselves in the pew, and they're exposed to the gospel, perhaps in a way they've never experienced before. How do you describe what's happening on a Sunday there in Ukraine in those churches?
Yeah, wonderful. So the services definitely have a lot of the displaced people in them. Pastor David, I believe, has moved in a lot of wisdom in this. He separated out that his heart is to see people won for Christ. His heart is to help people and to feed people, and he loves this country. But he's been able to separate that out in a way so that he's not made it a condition of being housed or fed. So when they feed people, they have a 5-minute gospel message and a prayer of thanks, grace before a meal. But he's made it very clear to people, if you don't want to come for the prayer or the message, you're still welcome to come and be fed. I think that's won him a lot of, won the hearts of people, because actually they all come early. They all come for the 5-minute gospel message. They all come for the prayer. They stand up. They're very respectful. And that flows into the services as well. You don't have to go to this church service, but most of the displaced people do come, and out of respect for David, but also out of respect for the gospel, and for they're seeing Christianity lived out in that way. So it's moving people's hearts.
And I've heard there's a significant response to Christ. People coming to Christ. How do you reflect on that? Because when you're in trauma, when your nation is suffering, you're looking for something in a higher purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And so definitely they have seen many, many people won for Christ. They've seen whole families won for Christ. And it is there is a desperation, because nobody knows when the war will end. All of these people that are there have lost everything. There is no one looking after them. And so, you're down to your last, whatever. And but when you talk to people, it's not like they're hopeless and totally gone. They want their country back. They want to rebuild their lives. But most of them now are definitely saying, you know what, I've got a purpose in my life now. So even out of the tragedy of this war, people are beginning to go, you know what, if it's brought me to my senses in my spiritual life that I need a savior. And so they're able to reconcile it that way.
Well, Rob, you're a wonderful connection between Australia and churches in Ukraine. And there's an even deeper connection coming, because when you're flying out on the 17th of December,
that's right,
you're taking under your wing with you our own Andrew McLennan.
Exactly.
Andy, the other half of the felon, Andy, on our Rise and Shine breakfast show.
Yeah, wonderful.
He's going to be travelling with you, along with his daughter, who's also going with you to Ukraine. When we think of this sort of thing, and Andy's going to be there, how are you thinking this whole process will work this time round?
Yeah, look, I love Andrew. I've come to know him as a really good friend over the last 5 years, we work well together. We know each other very well. I believe he will bring a life, and everyone knows Andy is full of life. So we go in there. Look, I think what we do is, by going there, it's not just money. And that is important, and I hope that we raise money. They've got a need to replace a van, and I'm hoping we can do that for them. They've got a need for presents for kids at Christmas. I'm hoping we can do that for them. The biggest thing, though, that for them that they've said is that we keep coming back, because not a lot of people visit, and they might fly in for an hour or two, but they get out quick because it's a war zone. We go in for 5 days. That's not kudos to us. It's just more, that's how we feel the Lord has led us. We minister there. We serve food. We get behind with the leaders. We pray for them. We encourage them. And I know Andrew's a huge encourager, and I'm just so blessed to have him at my side at praying, and he will be a massive encouragement to those people. And I'm also hoping he'll be able to report from Ukraine with his influence through his show, and be able to realize that there's still a war going on, but there's wonderful things happening for the gospel in that country.
And you mentioned a van. I know that there's been some funds that went towards some vans that have enabled the church to be able to get supplies to people who are in desperate needs. Yes. And so there's need for a replacement of one of those vans.
They've worn the van out, basically.
Okay, so, for listeners, let me just be really open with this. You are looking for some financial support for the church that you're connected to with Pastor David in Ukraine. Yep. How can people connect with you and make a donation?
Thank you so much for highlighting that. Yeah, people can definitely give. What I would say is every single cent is given to to Pastor David and his church and the work there. I fund my own trip. Andrew's funding his own trip. So we We do all of that, everything that's given. So the way that can be done is I've set up a Facebook page. It's called the UCC Ukraine Care Collective, and you can click on there. It has deep details of how to give, and it also has amazing stories and photographs of the work that's happening in Uzhhorod in the Ukraine.
Okay, so go onto Facebook, UCC,
Yes.
Ukraine Care Collective.
Yes.
And no doubt there'll be bank account details that people
Exactly.
can make a donation to.
Yep.
Hey, Rob, I know you're going to have an amazing time, and I don't want to say you're going to have a good time because you're going into what is really a war zone, and no doubt there are all sorts of insecurities around where you'll be.
True.
And you'll have Andrew on board, and his daughter is travelling with you as well. But, God's richest blessing and his favour on you
Thank
as
you
you
so
go.
much.
And for listeners who want to make some level of connection and even contribution to looking after those who are in a displaced position in Ukraine, that Facebook page, you might want to look that up, UCC. Just search for that on Facebook and be a part of what is happening. Rob Porter, thank you so much for taking some time
Thank
to
you
share
so
your
much.
heart with us today on 2020.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.